I had a realization today that I'd like to air with all of you to see if I'm simply going insane or if civilization really has arrived at this point. Though, allow me to set up the realization a little bit first, as a couple of interesting things have been happening the last few days, with practically every day bringing some new information or some new camera angle on the Minnesota shooting, including this from a few days ago. Wife of Minnesota woman killed in ICE shooting. We had whistles, they had guns. So this is obviously supposed to evoke images of a hopelessly outmatched resistance rising up against the evil fascist police force. But we had whistles. Why would you have whistles? That's a strange thing to just carry around whilst you're innocently dropping off your children at kindergarten and out and about doing absolutely nothing wrong. Why a whistle? Well, apparently, there are so-called ICE watchers organized in Minnesota and many other parts of America. These ICE watchers are organized so as to interfere with ICE operations and to blow whistles loudly so as to warn nearby illegals that ICE is in the area. The operations that they are then supposed to carry on with is things like, parking vehicles in the middle of the road, for example, to try and impede ICE's operations. Now, at this point, the entire narrative of she was just there by accident, waving people by, doing nothing wrong, has pretty much entirely collapsed. And what also emerged was this: the de-arrest primer. So this apparently is a little write-up that has been passed around these various anti-ICE organizations. Draft 1, so-called US Spring 2024. And it is exactly what you think it is. A de-arrest, aka unarrest, is the act of freeing someone who has been seized by law enforcement officers. Often it's police that repress protests and make arrests, but federal agents like Burtak, who were devolved in 2020, have done riot control and also have arresting powers. So, it is a primer that shows you how to interfere with police operations, how to actively free people who are being arrested and therefore being suspected of doing something illegal, using things like gripping them. And I do love how they paint them as black, by the way. It's like, listen, if you see a black person, no matter what, then you've got to assault the cops to get them away from them, obviously. With some things simply being like grabbing them and pulling them away, others having a bit more contact where you're pushing the officer whilst also attempting to pull away your black bloc members. And of course, they use terms like comrade, for example, throughout this book. This is unironically an insurrectionist communist manifesto here. And it also includes instructions on how to assault police officers, how to wrestle them, and how to break off the grasp of the pure and innocent illegals being molested by the fascist regime, of course. This has been passed around many of these ICE Watch organizations. It's out in the public, and frankly, whilst I am not quite there yet, the initial right-wing assertion that Renee Good was a, domestic terrorist, it's sounding a lot more likely day by day. Give it another week of revelations like this, and I'll probably arrive at the same conclusion. But to my little revelation then. This peer tweet popped up, and there's a woman in her full-fledged fetish garb, of course, the Handmaid's Tale outfit, with an added little COVID-19 mask, because, making sure that she specifically doesn't spread a disease that was basically defeated 5 years ago is very, very important, and not at all a sign of widespread brainwashing. No, of course not. And by the way, yes, the Handmaid's Tale is a fucking fetish outfit, and should probably be considered indecent exposure at this point, as the entirety of the Handmaid's Tale is woman's pornography material. Listen, the entire thing about Handmaid's Tale is that you have the woman, the classical female self-insert main character who isn't particularly attractive, who hasn't any particular skills, but all of the high-quality, handsome men around her are like, wow, I just have to breed you. And that is the entire gist of Handmaid's Tale. This fertile woman having intrinsic value to all of these powerful men around her, all of whom desperately want to breed her, even as their high-status women as well, unfertile trophy wives, stand around infinitely jealous at this woman, holding her hands as their husbands breed her. Again, seriously, The Handmaid's Tale makes 50 Shades of Grey seem subtle. It makes Milking Farm appear restrained and full of self-control by comparison. But we are wandering somewhat off topic again. So, here you have her in the full garb, covered face and everything, and on the next slide you have an ICE agent, also quite covered with their masks. And it kind of struck me like, okay, so here you have, on the one side, a woman covering their faces, protesters covering their faces, and then law enforcement covering their faces. We basically hear, and freedom, yes, that definitely does look like just the definition of freedom right there. But we now basically have two groupings that have put on their uniforms and are stood opposite one another. But which one of these two groups actually has reason to fear the other? Which one of these two groups actually has reason to cover their faces? Well, some interesting details have arrived. ICE agents report unprecedented 3,200% surge in car attacks last year. The Department of Homeland Security announced Thursday that ICE agents reported an unprecedented increase of 3,200% in vehicular attacks over the past year, leading up to Wednesday's incident in which ICE officers shot and killed a driver during a protest in Minneapolis. They have also seen a 8,000% increase in death threats as well. Okay, and this is of course several occasions like this, like the ICE agent also being dragged underneath the car, as we've told about frequently, and it made me realize, again, this person has no actual fear of consequences. This is a steady constant on the left right now. Renee and her wife, were out there in the neighborhood, intended on having learned how to interfere with a police situation, with police operations. They were there explicitly to place themselves in between illegal aliens and law enforcement, and they were equipped to do so as well. Renee was in a vehicle which has been used actively, frequently, and often against ICE agents over the course of the last year. These people genuinely believe there would be no consequences for this. Nothing was going to happen to them. Even when her wife was trying to get in the car, going drive, baby, drive, with the ICE officer in front of the car, they felt invincible. We've shown previous footage with the wife going, oh, you want to go? You want to get some? To the ICE officers, actively provoking them. I've talked on multiple occasions about this particular phenomenon, how it seems as if women in particular appear to feel protected, as if they are somehow immune from consequence, that nothing bad can ever happen to them, as if they are the heroes in their own tale, and this, it illuminates it perfectly. This woman has nothing to fear. This woman has nothing to fear. This woman has nothing to fear. She will not be arrested. She will not be assaulted. Her rights will certainly not be taken away, and much to her chagrin, she will not be used as a breeding toy by a rich and influential man, no matter how much she clearly desires to. On the other hand, this person is likely to get doxxed if their face shows. In fact, the recent agent involved in the shooting was doxxed. The hotel he was staying at had an employee dox him. That employee was eventually fired, and then hordes of people showed up to the hotel, interested, in all due likelihood, in assaulting him. If any of these individuals let their mask slip, people on Twitter will write out their full name in public in front of hundreds of thousands of people and go, "Stay peaceful now." This person is actually at risk. These people have to cover their faces for the fear of violent mobs, of people who believe that assaulting them is correct, people who have read pamphlets about assaulting them, people who believe that it is not only morally correct, but morally reprehensible not to interfere with their operations. And not to mention, of course, I picked this one out at random, one of literally millions of tweets just like this, basically explaining that, oh, you know, ICE people aren't human, you can't side with them, anyone who does side with them is automatically vile, etc., etc. And this sort of dehumanization has, of course, been going on for a very long time. I remember talking about this in like 2015 or something, going, listen, if you keep dehumanizing your opposition, one day they're gonna go, all right, I guess I'm the monster then. And we could go over this again, how the two lines are so firmly drawn now that there is absolutely no overlap. There exists two utterly separate realities, and the two cannot mix. I have yet to see a single tweet, and again, I've been looking, okay? I've all over my timeline, this day in, day out, day out, right? I have legitimately not seen a single instance, not from the left or the right, mind you, of somebody going, right, so my initial take was, it was this, but I've changed my mind, it's actually the opposite. Not one. Not a single one. And again, it's just this particular instance there is no middle ground here. It doesn't seem to exist. It's simply gone. We have had for the longest time at the least some sort of central group going like umming and ahhing, and hey, I was part of that group as well, as was Sargon on my podcast, because for better or worse, we remain fairly central on most topics, going, oh, she could have panicked, etc. That doesn't look like the case now, and I'll go on, but I'm not going to go over that over again here, but people's position on this appears to be set at the first image, at the first piece of footage to arrive. And with more information like this, it all becomes clear. With this idea of these opposite groups in their uniforms, with the heroes of justice that genuinely believe nothing bad can happen to them, against the other people who also believe themselves to be the heroes of justice, although they know something bad can happen to them. They've seen it. They've had their icons assassinated. They've seen the people who stand opposite them now cheer on their deaths. They know very well there is no magical shield protecting them. These are now, I don't want to say it, I genuinely don't, but what we have here is two separate, opposed forces within the nation. Their uniforms are not yet entirely widespread, but the doctrine is already there. The battle lines are already drawn. It's already a civil war. Not in the form of armies marching, of course, not in the form of a state seceding from another, or federal agents even being fired upon, or National Guards mobilizing, but as in an insurrection. This is an insurrectionist pamphlet. As I said, this is literally a pamphlet arguing for the public to rise up against the legitimate law enforcement of the government. That is what this is. This is it's a communist insurrectionist pamphlet. There is no other way to actually describe that thing. It doesn't. I know I'm being hyperbolic, or am I? Am I actually? That's kind of what I'm asking here. Am I even being hyperbolic? Or is it simply just the case that we haven't realized yet? It's already a fact, the conflict is already going, battle lines are already drawn, there is no middle ground, there is no like, oh, the North has some good points, but the South has too, etc. It's all there, strident, clear-cut, inescapable. Because I, for one, I don't see how this could de-escalate. Beyond one side utterly crushing the other, I no longer see a path to escalation. Beyond, literally, again, the iterative prisoner's dilemma of continuing to escalate until the side blinks. But again, does this... I mean, they're already this extreme. They're already at this point. What escalation do we genuinely believe they will back down from? What threat can the right, what threat of consequence can the right levy against the left that they don't already believe is actual reality? Like, what can you tell this woman to make her stop escalating? So, let me know what you think. Genuinely, I want to know, because I feel like I'm going a little bit insane here, and yet, what else can you think at this point? Hey, I'm not even an American, okay? I'm a Norwegian. Maybe I'm simply too online at this point. Maybe I've gone scrolling through my timeline too much, but it sure as shit looks like it. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.